Hey guys, welcome back. It's been a minute and that's because I just moved. I'm still getting the place set up, so it's a bit bare at the moment. But in this video, I want to talk about my favorite topic, which is Jung, and more specifically, why we may struggle with living an average life and the idea of unique potential. So I've been reading Modern Man in Search of a Soul, and there's a bit in here that really struck me as to why we may fear the idea of normality and being average. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people are going to relate to, because even if you have a successful life, you may still feel unfulfilled. And this is something that Jung has talked about a lot, the idea of everyone having an inherent unique potential that they want to realize in their lifetime. Now, you guys know I love Jung, and he's written a lot about the idea of living up to your fullest potential in life. And there are some bits in this book that I want to share with you in this video. But first of all, what is potential? The other day, I was actually talking to my friend about this, and I was trying to explain this idea of living up to your potential to her. And to my surprise, she really recoiled at my use of the word potential and explained that to her it felt like such a burden, like an expectation that's put on you by society. The whole idea of, oh, you have so much potential that you have to live up to. This kind of pressure for achievement and success. And this is actually what inspired me to do this video today, because I realized that there are two very different understandings of the word potential. And if you misunderstand that, then you're missing the entire point of Jung when he talks about unique potential. So to fix my past mistake with this, I want to start with a definition. To keep things simple, I'm going to use the terms internal and external potential. External potential is what I think my friend was thinking of when I was explaining this. It is the push that comes from others to be the best version of what is expected of you. And this can mean being the best at everything you do, having the best job, making the most money. It's to reach the skies of society. That is the idea of external potential. And while all of these things aren't bad, it's not what I mean when I'm talking about the word potential. These things are all the aim of your persona. It's about social success. However, the kind of potential I want to talk about is what Jung calls your unique potential. So Jung's whole idea with this goes against the popular belief from Kant at the time of tabula rasa, which is that people are born as a blank slate, that you're shaped entirely by your experiences. And Jung was against this. Jung was an essentialist. He believed that people are born with an inherent personality that ideally, through their life experiences, they get to develop and fulfill. You can think of it like this. You're born with all of the puzzle pieces to reach and fulfill your unique potential in life. But all these pieces need to be developed. They need to go from an immature to a mature state so that you can actually use them. So the idea of unique potential is to simply develop all these pieces of your personality that you are born with and realizing them together. He believed that everything that is already within you will guide you towards the life that only you can pursue, the life that is the most fulfilling for you. There's no competition, only yourself in developing these parts. Now, when I was talking about the other type of potential, I briefly mentioned the persona. Now, the persona is like the image you have of who you want to be. It is the right way to be, and it's shaped by your role in society. The word persona literally means your social mask. But the path of your persona is a very difficult path to follow because you're constantly trying to fit yourself into this mold of what you should be. The persona is an important part of you, and it's something you need to be able to use when it's needed because it's what allows you to adapt to society. The aim of the persona is adaptation and normality. And while this is very important for life, it's not the only goal. So this poses a question which has been around in psychology for a very long time, and that is, what does man need to be happy, or rather fulfilled? Jung's predecessors all found their own answer to this question, each building upon each other, but even before then, there's been one very simple treatment that is supposed to help people achieve happiness, and that is the confessional. This is something that was the prototype for all these psychological methods that are to come after. As Jung explains, as soon as man was capable of conceiving the idea of sin, he had recourse to psychic concealment, or to put it in analytical language, repressions arose. So think of it like this: anything that is concealed is a secret. And this is both good and bad, because on the one hand, whenever you have to maintain a secret, it acts like a psychic poison that eventually alienates you from the community, and it can even bring up feelings of shame. But on the other hand, having a secret that you can share with other people can be really helpful for the differentiation of an individual. It can help you build a stronger sense of identity. However, the real danger is when these secrets have been repressed, when even you aren't aware that you have them. And this is where they fall into the unconscious. They become a part of your shadow, where they start to enact a destructive or unproductive influence over everything you do. This is what causes you to self-sabotage. So whenever you get in your own way, whenever you do something that you don't like that you do, it's because of these unconscious influences that come from a repression. So this is why the first stage of psychoanalysis, the method of catharsis, has its roots in the age-old practice of confession. And if you're aware of the things you conceal, confessing them can be helpful enough that you can release this unconscious influence, this unconscious power it has over you, and go back to living a normal and healthy life. But the problem is, this clearly doesn't work for everyone, because what if you aren't aware of the things you repressed? And this is then where Freud stepped in and introduced a method of bringing aspects of the self that were lost back into the light. This is the method of explanation. And Freud has a very physician-like attitude towards this. He treats his patients by studying their symptoms and tracing it back to the root in their own unconscious. And in doing so, he gives somewhat of an explanation, but otherwise leaves the person high and dry. They might now be aware of the problem, but they have no way of going about to fix it. And then here is where Freud's former student, Adler, comes in to fill the gap. He begins at the very point where Freud leaves off. He helps the person who's found a way to see into himself also find a way to live a normal life. He's realized that it's obviously not enough for the person to know they have a problem, they also need to know how to fix it. Adler's teachings were all about achieving social adaptation and normality. He believed that being a normal person and useful for society were the most desirable goals and the most fulfilling pursuit for any human being. Now, I'm a big fan of Adler, and if you're in a tough spot in life right now and you're struggling to just make it day to day, then I really recommend reading the book, The Courage to be Disliked. This explains a lot of his ideas in a very simple way through a dialogue between a philosopher and a young man who comes to seek his help. And I found this so helpful myself, so I'll mention it in the description again if you want to check it out. But even after this stage, Jung realized that there are people who have learned how to see into themselves and understand their problems, who have achieved a normal adaptation, and they're able to function in society, they've achieved success, but are still left unfulfilled. And it's at this point that Jung created an additional fourth stage, the method of transformation. So I want to read you Jung's explanation for this. Its part is to make up a deficit left by the previous stages. It comes to meet an additional and still unsatisfied need. In other words, we must ascertain what could seem more desirable or lead further than the claim to be a normally adapted social being. Nothing is more useful or fitting than to be a normal human being, but the very notion of a normal human being suggests a restriction to the average, as does also the concept of adaptation. It is only a man who, as things stand, already finds it difficult to come to terms with the everyday world who can see in this restriction a desirable improvement. A man, let us say, whose neurosis unfits him for normal life. To be normal is a splendid idea for the unsuccessful, for all those who have not yet found an adaptation, but for people who have far more ability than the average, for whom it never was hard to gain successes and to accomplish their share of the world's work. For them, restriction to the normal signifies the bed of Procrustes, unbearable boredom, infernal sterility, and hopelessness. As a consequence, there are many people who become neurotic because they are only normal, as there are people who are neurotic because they cannot become normal. For the former, the very thought that you want to educate them to normality is a nightmare. Their deepest need is really to be able to lead abnormal lives. So the idea of this is that there are still people who, even after they've achieved a normal life, they've created a persona that successfully allows them to be a part of society, they still feel unfulfilled. They feel that something is still lacking, and it's this pain through which problems are created. As Jung writes, normality may be great for those who struggle to live a normal life, but there are also those who struggle in life because of this restriction to normality. Their pain comes from unfulfilled potential, and I'm pretty sure anyone who's clicked on this video belongs to that same group. If you're looking to improve yourself, if you're looking to get something more out of life, and I think this may be of a lot of interest for you too. And now, this is where we come back to the shadow. Your shadow contains everything you suppress or reject within yourself. But these things never just disappear. You can't destroy anything that's a part of you. Instead, it falls into the unconscious, where it can no longer be controlled or developed. It remains stuck in an inferior state, and it has this immature and oftentimes unproductive influence over your life. Next to this, you have your persona. Remember, this is the image, the mask you have of who you want to be. So the persona is there to help you adapt to society so that you're safe, you're protected, you're reliant on other people to be able to survive. We've evolved to have a persona that allows us to fit in. But the problem is anything that's a part of you that's in conflict with this image of your persona falls into your shadow. It's immediately rejected and suppressed, and you can no longer use it intentionally. And these are often the very parts of yourself you're missing in order to live your unique potential. However, whenever you sort out pieces of yourself that are bad like this, you suppress them, and their lack in your personality shows up as these sinks, these blind spots, where you develop insecurities, fears, limiting beliefs. For example, let's say you suppress your anger because you want to be seen as someone who's very easygoing and likable, but this is then exactly the area where your inferiorities will develop. For example, if you're unable to intentionally use and express your anger, if you keep suppressing it, you will start to see yourself as overly weak and passive. You will start to develop resentment in your relationships when you don't speak up, and you may struggle to reach your career goals because you're not able to be assertive when that's needed from you. And so on. These are just some examples of ways that you will feel this lacking in yourself. And then it's through this that you develop all these insecurities that continue to hold you back. You can trace so many of these problems in life back to your shadow. And the goal is to find what's missing. It's to retrieve these pieces of the puzzle and to integrate it. So say you have a dream. You have a vision of your ideal life. So why can't you just go for it? It's usually because you're missing something to get there. And it's when you then try to reach for this goal that you'll be confronted with exactly what it is you need to deal with in yourself, exactly what it is you need to develop in order to reach this goal. As Jung explains it, your highest potential as an individual is in the realization of the self, which is simply all of the pieces of your personality developed as a whole. So your unique potential then lies in retrieving all of these pieces, the ones you've sorted into piles of good, which is embraced in your persona, and bad, which has been suppressed into your shadow, retrieving them and fully developing them. And now the parts of yourself that are already embraced in your persona, these are parts of yourself that are conscious, you have relative good control over them, they should be easy because you've already developed them a lot. However, it's the parts of yourself that you've suppressed that you're missing and that you feel that you're missing in order to reach your potential. Whenever you suppress a part of yourself, you will run into insecurities and fears and limiting beliefs. And all of these things come from a lack in personality, a sort of void where there should have been a supportive aspect to your character that's missing because it's been suppressed. Just like suppressed anger can sabotage you through a lack of confidence and assertiveness, any part of yourself that you suppress will create an inferiority in that area. That is the nature of your shadow. But this is exactly why Jung believed that your shadow contains the seeds to your potential. It's because even if you've achieved a normal adaptation to life by creating an amazing persona and you can live as this, you might not find fulfillment from it because you haven't realized your full personality. You haven't realized yourself, or as he puts it, your unique potential. And it's in these suppressed aspects of your personality that, if allowed to surface and to grow, you will find all of your strengths and talents and potentials you may have, because all parts of yourself are pulling you towards it. Just think, like this example with anger, if your shadow isn't A, causing you to unconsciously self-sabotage, or B, being out of your conscious control to be able to use productively, then there's actually nothing between you and the vision you have for your life. You have to try and understand that the shadow isn't bad. I think this is a very common misconception, that the shadow is evil. It is something terrible that you must get rid of, that you must destroy, but this couldn't be further from the truth. It's merely inferior, and that's why it can show up in unproductive or destructive ways. Anything that falls prey to the unconscious can no longer be controlled or developed, which is why it's stuck in an immature state. It hasn't matured and been developed like all the parts of your personality you've embraced and you live and use every single day. You can almost imagine your shadow like a toddler trying to do the tasks of an adult. This is the kind of understanding you must find for it. Although your shadow may get in your way and hold you back in life, you have to understand it's not out of malice. In fact, it's showing you exactly what you need to deal with in order to be able to reach your goals. It's showing you the pathway you have to take to get where you want to go, even if this may be expressed in unproductive ways, such as through fear, self-criticism, or explosive behaviors. You have to understand that these parts of yourself haven't matured. That's why they're unproductive. But they can be developed and they can be used productively. Just imagine how different could your life look if you could pursue your dreams without these limitations of your own mind. You are meant to live up to your fullest potential, and you are capable of learning and achieving everything you need to get there. That's the whole point. For a lot of people, normal adaptation isn't enough. There's this psychic need for self-realization, in other words, to realize your unique potential. Now, like I said, Jung believed that you are born with all of these pieces of your personality. You just need to go back and retrieve them from your shadow and develop these pieces in order to fulfill your potential in life, to live a life of fulfillment and peace of mind. Now, if you're wondering, how do you do this? How do you integrate your shadow? I've done a whole video on shadow work, how to get started with it, what it is. I will link that in the description so you can check it out. But I hope you liked this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next week. Bye.